During your investigation on the ground, this was tracked on camera for 40 minutes, and you were finding it was going in circles. How significant is that detail, and what are you taking away from this rubber duck incident?
Well, the fact that it was going in circles is disproving any suggestion that it was just a balloon floating randomly with the prevailing winds. It was intelligently controlling itself and circling a specific area, which we actually searched with ground penetrating radar just to see if there was anything there. What fascinates me is you have a situation now where military pilots, civilian pilots, Customs Border Protection, local civilian witnesses are reporting with frequency anomalous objects doing what apparently seem to be intelligently controlled maneuvers over remote parts of the Arizona desert. And the question we asked was, could there be something happening in Arizona that's not being publicly disclosed by the US government? And that's actually what led us in the latter part of the program to head up towards Sedona. I do think that what is possibly happening, we know from the stories that I've done previously with people like Jake Barber and David Grush, we know that there are allegations of a legacy UAP retrieval program that is retrieved, unbelievable as this may sound, unbelievable but true non-human intelligence technology. And we know that there are locations, hidden locations, where this technology is being experimented with and worked with. And I think there's a body of evidence to suggest that there are perhaps non-human and perhaps some human technologies operating in this airspace. That's what my takeaway is. I don't think that this is an incursion by organised crime cartels from Mexico. I do think that what we need to look at here is the very real possibility that the Customs and Border Protection stumbled across some kind of craft that are, in some cases, emanating from covert US government facilities that the US is trying to keep quiet. And I do worry about the fact that the US is still maintaining the pretense that it has no knowledge of the existence of any kind of non-human technology, because it's becoming very, very clear good people in different agencies, notably in this case Bob Thompson from CBP, they're seeing these things. Military pilots are seeing these things. And what do we do to these people? We gaslight them. And the government tells them they're not seeing what they're seeing. And I can tell you, Natasha, there are a lot of witnesses who, frankly, are sick to death of being gaslit. They're coming forward and they're determined to get this story told. And I think there's pressure now on the government to be more transparent about what it knows.
And Ross, tell me a little bit more about whistleblower and former Border Patrol agent Bob Thompson. What was his journey to bring these videos to light? And what has this reporting process been like for you? I know it's a rigorous one.
So Bob's somebody who has been working in national security. He's been keeping our borders secure, and he ended up in essentially the aviation wing of Customs and Border Protection, making sure that there was adequate monitoring over our borders. And as we know, this has been a controversial issue. It was a major election issue for the incoming administration. There's been a lot of political capital made out of pointing out the fact that our borders were, frankly, wide open. And I got to see that myself with our correspondent Ali Bradley on the border. So Bob was concerned that inside CBP, when he was raising his concerns about these anomalous objects being seen by CBP aircraft and by military witnesses that he'd spoken to, there just seemed to be an inertia. Nothing was happening. And I don't think it's a conspiracy, Natasha. I don't think there are people inside Customs and Border Protection who are basically saying, we've got to cover this up. More often than not, the explanation is a simple screw up. Nobody wants to admit that they have no explanation. And so whilst these objects are breaching airspace and coming into areas that are sensitive and getting in the way of military aircraft, and in one case we know about even colliding with them, I think the problem for Bob's bosses was they determined to put their heads in the sand because it's just too hard. How do you explain something that you can't control? And this is the bigger issue with the drones incursions. So we have a huge problem, frankly, where drones are breaching US airspace and the US government is putting its head in the sand on the issue.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.